Thursday, June 6th, 2013, a 79-year-old woman named Marilyn Walpole, along with her husband Jim, walked down a busy street in Toronto, Canada. They were on their way back to their hotel after a dinner date at a local Irish pub called PJ O'Brien's. The couple was from Ohio, but they were on the last leg of a cross-country vacation through Canada, and so far the trip had been amazing. And so the retired couple is enjoying their evening, just walking down the road, reminiscing about what an amazing trip it had been. And at some point, as they're walking on the sidewalk, they see up ahead there's all this scaffolding that's been built up right over the sidewalk. There's some sort of construction happening on a building that lined the sidewalk, and there was a platform that was built maybe 8 to 10 feet above the sidewalk, this scaffolding, so that workers could stand on this platform and do construction. And so pedestrians, like Marilyn and Jim, if they wanted to walk on the sidewalk, they would have to walk under the scaffolding. Like the sidewalk continues unobstructed right underneath. The scaffolding is intentionally built to allow for this tunnel for pedestrians to walk. Like, this is not a big deal. It's very common in cities. And so Marilyn and Jim, they walk underneath the scaffolding, and they're not thinking anything of this. This is completely ordinary. There's other people also walking under the scaffolding. It's all good. But at some point, Jim trips while they're under the scaffolding. And where he lands is where there's a couple pieces of metal kind of poking up out of the ground, some metal tubing. It was kind of obvious and people avoided it, but he's falling, he can't avoid it, and he lands with his neck striking basically this metal tube poking up out of the ground. And so Jim, he hits the ground and the tube cuts his neck wide open. And so suddenly Jim is literally gushing blood all over the sidewalk. And it happens so completely suddenly that Marilyn, she saw her husband trip and she's kind of getting him to stand up. And as she's doing that, she's seeing all this blood pooling everywhere. And she just freezes. She has no idea what's happened. Like, what's going on with Jim? Why is he bleeding? And she starts screaming for help. And there are these two guys. There's nobody else inside the tunnel with them, but there are these two men who don't know each other. They're just strangers out on the street. They hear Marilyn screaming for help, pointing at her husband who's still laying on the ground. And these two guys come running over to her and they're kind of assessing the situation. And they see Jim kind of grabbing at his neck as blood is pouring out of him. And one of the men pulls out his phone and calls 911. So he starts talking to first responders. And the other man, he got down next to Jim. He pulled the scarf off from around his neck and he cradled Jim's head and he wrapped the scarf around Jim's neck and he applied pressure to Jim's neck. And very calmly, he told Jim, "It's okay, we're stopping the bleeding, paramedics are on their way." He tells Marilyn, "It's okay, I've got your husband, you stay calm, everything's gonna be fine." And so Marilyn, who again is just kind of in a panic here, this happens so suddenly, she immediately calmed down because she can tell clearly this second man, the guy holding her husband's head and applying pressure, he's got to be a doctor or at a minimum in the medical field because this guy has just a commanding presence, a very calming presence, and knows what he's doing. And so to Marilyn's great relief, the man on the ground holding her husband's head and the man who had called 911, they stayed with her and Jim all the way until the paramedics arrived, which was only a couple of minutes later. And then after Jim was lifted up by paramedics and put into the back of the ambulance,